Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Kickin with Karan. Today I have Galeal from NetFoundry, the founder and CEO. Hey Galeal, how you doing? Thanks for joining us on the show, man.
Karan, how you doing? Pleasure to be here.
I am good. Hey, so for my audience, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, what you've been doing for the last couple of years, and tell us a little bit about NetFoundry.
We're a bit of an odd duck, Karan. So let me just start with a quick analogy, right? I'll start with cloud, what you guys do over at Oracle with OCI. So I think one of the things that we now start to actually underappreciate about cloud is the fact that you or I, or like anybody, can just go and have access to world-class infrastructure, right? Spin up some instances in OCI and away we go. That wasn't the case, not to date myself, but that was not the case 20 years ago, right? And that's kind of enabled this awesome permissionless innovation, this awesome decentralized innovation. But what's kind of ironic about it, Karan, the cloud in many ways is still tethered to the ground, if you will, when it comes to secure networking. So essentially, we have this kind of bolted on paradigm, I'll call it, where we kind of bolt on like a whole bunch of security and networking stuff on top of delivering an application from, let's say, OCI to, let's say, my laptop. And that bolted on stuff, that's kind of in the way of agility, automation, permissionless innovation. And so NetFoundry seeks to take that away, to kind of cloudify secure networking, if you will.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, when we, began the cloud journey at Oracle, 5-6 years ago, security was the core fundamental building block of how we were thinking about the cloud, right? I mean, lots of, different public cloud providers, security becomes this like massive bunch of Lego blocks you got to go build yourself. And, there's lots of potential for chaos and bad behavior, but we wanted to make sure that we provide the right tool set and wanted to partner with the right companies to provide the right set of guidance for customers to properly secure their applications. So tell me a little bit about the types of customers or the types of applications that fit this bill. And does it also, I guess I'm curious, does it also differ by different industries, like whether it's financial services or let's say, manufacturing?
Yeah. So first of all, one of the things that attracted us to OCI was your commitment to security. And you can do unbelievable things in OCI from an application security perspective. The ability to orchestrate that all from, let's just say, a single pane of glass, I know it's an overused expression, or a single API, that applies to any app. You are a developer with a C app or a web-based app, a JavaScript-based app. You would take our SDK. That SDK is essentially going to, put some code into your app, and your app's going to do whatever it does in user space, and it's going to pass some packets down towards a wire. And then we're going to grab those packets and make them secure from point A to point B, regardless of what type of app or what type of vertical. That said, kind of to your question, not all apps need that level of security, control, automation, agility. Typical web apps, for example, don't really need that. There are, however, apps that are in kind of two categories that can really benefit from this kind of combination of OCI and NetFoundry. And it's apps that need security, right? They need like top shelf security. And there's an increasing number of applications there. And obviously certain verticals who are more compliance and security conscious have more needs for those type of apps. And then number two, like massively distributed apps, because the developers and their DevOps teams and their NetOps teams, they need to be able to deliver and manage those applications at scale in a very distributed way. And you really can't do that with bolted on infrastructure. There's just only so many VPNs, et cetera, that you can manage. And so the fact that you can kind of get security as code for that kind of massively distributed app, that means a lot of security. That's where we're really relevant.
And you talked about SDKs. How easy is it to get access to and use NetFoundry? Do you have to actually like embed integration into your app, like your business logic, or can it just be sort of essentially used as a as an API, or like how does it all work?
Yeah, great question. And you're right. It starts with the SDKs. In some ways, that's actually the simplest implementation, even though it might sound like it's not. If you have a greenfield app, for example, most of these apps take a common framework like Electron. They're basically passing packets down towards the network in a very similar manner through a similar framework. And we just wrap up that framework in a little bit of code that enables you as a developer to have control and visibility, but without becoming a security engineer or a network engineer. So it can literally be a few blocks of code, depending exactly how your application is addressing the network, how you're sending packets down towards the NIC or the virtual NIC. Now, that's great for greenfield. You have a existing application. It might be simpler for you to kind of take our agents, which sit in containers and VMs and Windows and Mac and Android and iOS and et cetera. You could just take the agent and you could put it on point A and point B. That agent is still going to be application specific, to be clear, Karan. Like that agent's not like you put it on your laptop and you're using Netflix. It's not going to go make your Netflix secure. Sure. But according to your policy, it's going to make your business application secure.
Right. And that's where potentially, Edge and IoT comes into play, right? I'm guessing where customers are putting their applications across the board in different devices in different locations out of the edge, and they need, the right sort of security, operational guidance, et cetera, right? And so you're saying that using that agent and the integration, they can essentially easily deploy that and then connect to on-prem.
Yeah, it makes your app secure anywhere. So like you kind of hit the nail on the head, like the more distribution between edge, cloud, the more distributed compute that we have, the more the developer and the DevOps team and the ops team, the more they need kind of this as code mentality. So it almost doesn't matter how many edges or clouds that particular app may traverse.
Got it. So let me maybe ask a bit more sort of philosophical question, which is, everybody talks about security, right? All of our competitors do, almost everybody in the enterprise space does. Where do you see the space kind of really going? What are going to be the big sort of trends in this area where potentially NetFoundry could be a play, in the next, 3, 5, 10 years? Because I think, in the last several years, right, like when cloud sort of was getting off the ground, most enterprise customers use security as a core fundamental area of concern. It's starting to sort of go away. But where do you see this sort of space, changing in the next several years?
When we would talk about security with developers, with NetOps teams, DevOps teams, et cetera, there was a certain awareness. But quite frankly, a lot of organizations kind of saw security as like an insurance policy. Like, well, am I going to buy the insurance policy or am I going to take my chances? And that decision was influenced often by kind of their internal competencies. So if an organization didn't have security as kind of a priority, if not a North Star, then they wouldn't necessarily understand the difference between like A, B, C, and D, right? And so then they were probably not likely to make the choice for security. And that was kind of compounded, Karan, because it used to be like this tug of war. Like, do you choose security or do you choose business velocity, agility, automation? And it's kind of like, well, forget about that security insurance policy. I got to move quick. Where we see the world changing in this kind of hyper-connected world, Karan, you need both. Like a modern business today, it doesn't like use software. It is software. It is connected software. It needs security and it needs agility. In our view, the only way you can do that is as code. You got to get rid of the bolted on stuff. You got to get rid of this kind of business WAN construct. You have to get rid of all these type of things and say, listen, the world has changed. It's a new playing field. And I need both automation and security.
Now, I'm guessing you talk a lot about sort of security as code, right? And I think that helps with, especially where, we feel as a cloud provider, it's weird of us to say that, but, everything is going to go multi-cloud. It's going to happen, right? And I'm guessing one of the sort of advantages is you write code once, right? From a security standpoint, you deploy anywhere and everywhere. Right? Is that kind of one of the core fundamental benefits, I guess, of your platform?
Absolutely. And we're starting to see like some words to describe that, like shift left, or security as code. But that's the idea. Take security, put it into the nucleus of your application delivery and development lifecycle so that it can be managed as code. And yeah, like, of course, you're going to change your code over time. And therefore, you're also going to change your security as code over time. And that's great because it's the opposite of what we have today, where it's like two ships in the night, like, right? The network's over here and the app is over here and they don't really talk to each other and they just kind of pass each other in the night. Like that was fine 10 years ago. 10 years from now, no way. Right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you've got single primitives that you're interacting with, right? You don't have to worry about it once you solve that problem, right? So
that's the exact goal. And then, Karan, it gets into more of what I would call a software-based architecture, an API microservices type architecture, than a traditional networking architecture. Like, as you know, in traditional networking, most of those components, and I say this fondly, right? I've been doing network engineering for 20 years. Most of those components, they don't talk to each other, right? They're islands, they're proprietary. There's not open interfaces, APIs, et cetera, very monolithic. Well, as you know, the software world is like on the opposite direction and kind of left the networking world behind in the dust. Well, as soon as we make security as code, well, now all of a sudden the idea of delivering and managing secure applications, now it can be in that type of architecture. So you could have lots of primitives from lots of different companies that are stitched together with the proper interfaces, because it does take a village. And now you have more of a software paradigm, and that's what we're after.
Perfect. Cool. So last question, how do customers play around with your platform on Oracle Cloud?
Yeah, great. Two ways. We open sourced the underlying software. It's called ZITI, Z-I-T-I. We're big believers in open source, mainly because of what I mentioned at the top. We want to enable permissionless innovation. So folks can go to ziti.dev and they can pick it up and play with it, so to speak, in a sandbox environment. On the Oracle side, we've been quite busy with your folks who are awesome, by the way. They've written up a couple blogs and also reference documents on the Oracle Cloud OCI website that talk people through like use cases, like, hey, you want to make your Kubernetes APIs private on OCI. Here's how you can do it in NetFoundry. Or you want to take Oracle Autonomous Database and you want to close the open firewall ports in front of it. You want to close down the open link listeners. You want to make it more secure. Here's how you do it. So I would also encourage folks to go that direction. You can go with the open source of ziti.dev. You can go to Oracle Cloud and fix a particular problem. And of course, you can go to netfoundry.io and poke around there to see what use case you have that we may be able to help you with.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me today, Galeal. It's been super exciting talking to you about NetFoundry and what NetFoundry and Oracle are doing together. Thanks for joining us again today, and we'll catch you another time on Kickin' It with Karan. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for having us. Thanks so much, Karan.